Behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him.
As birds flying, so will the Lord of hosts defend Jerusalem. Defending also, he will deliver it, and passing over, he will preserve it.
For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. For by fire and by his sword will the Lord plead with all flesh, and the slain of the Lord shall be many.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is your brother Havayala. I want to give all glory and praises to our Heavenly Father Yahweh, and we do so in the name of our Lord and Savior Yahweh Shai. Grace and mercy be abound to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth that are waiting on the second coming of our Lord and Savior Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. As you see, we have this lesson that we have going on. It's a major subject that's going on currently. And as you see in the title, World War III, the end game for all the nations. Okay. So World War III, the end game of all the nations. Armaggedon. Yeah, so we have this course lesson going on because of some of the events that have been occurring. I know that this is a hot button topic globally. Even people that keep their heads in the sand are even talking about this. People that don't even follow geopolitics, people who, you know, usually want to mind their own business, but guess what? They have to figure out what's going on because the prices at the pump are speaking to them. And many times with the sheeple, the only way that they understand that something is changing is if their pockets is hurting. Okay. And that's just the reality of the way the average person thinks on this planet, but particularly in Babylon, where people are very much in a bubble, in a massive, in a crazy bubble, the way that they view the world. Now, as you see in this image, I know some of y'all may wonder, yeah, this image I created before the screen, this image is based on for Street Fighter. All right. So, you know, basically got the different nations in this image where you can see that, you know, all the different nations geared up for battle. Okay. Led by the two opposing sides. Okay. One is, you know, Babylon, and one is Gog and Magog, or as you would know as the USA and Russia. Okay. So those are the two that are pretty much in, you know, battle with one another for, you know, hegemony. Okay. And and in the description of this particular lesson, which, you know, we're going to kind of just do it on the fly because there's so many precepts that we could bring out, but it's discussing the motivating factors, okay, the factors and the motives behind the war, okay, and that's pretty much, you know, what a lot of people are kind of getting wrong. In particular, a lot of people that you may watch in these streams that are on YouTube, these ones that get a lot of views. We've also, you know, we've talked in the past about Professor Jiang and some of the stuff that he had right and some of the stuff he had wrong. He even admitted recently, of course, that he has no particular set belief system in terms of worship. So that automatically lets you know that the Most High is not dealing with him. Like he says, he bases his stuff off of game theory and predictive history, as his channel is called. He's been on different platforms, whether it be, you know, other content creators. I've seen him with Sneeko, You had one that was involved with another person who has dealings in what's known as eschatology, which is basically the end times, largely based off of, what the Bible or any religious books would say. And, we are, by definition, as men that believe in Yahushua HaMashiach, we are, by definition, natural eschatologists. Okay? So, we are eschatologists. Okay? We talk about the end times. Like I was saying yesterday on the Telegram chat, that the end times is, for us, the arrival of, once Yahushua comes. Because by being a believer in Yahushua, you're waiting for an end, a resolution. And as you know, in the scriptures, it says that Yahushua is the author and the finisher of our faith, meaning he completes our faith. Okay. So our faith is a journey, and our journey has, of course, an end. It has a destination. So therefore, we ourselves as believers in Yahushua HaMashiach, we are also in an end game. Okay. So we have to, think of it from that perspective, right? About how we would get to that end game. So we have to still consider a lot of the same things as well. And that's one thing that, we have to talk about is how do we reach that destination? How do we maintain our faith? How do we build our faith? Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into some precepts. Let me see if I can get this thing set up. And some of y'all that may see on the replay later, feel free to make some comments. Also share it, like, and subscribe to the videos. In addition to that, if you have any questions, set it in the comment section. There might be stuff that we already might have addressed in past videos, or we may address in the future videos. Okay. So let's see if we can get to this. Okay, so what is going on? Why is the Most High going to bring all these nations towards the valley of Jehoshaphat, or where would the battle of Armageddon? The battle of Armageddon is what World War III is known as in the Bible. Now, World War III is not the title of it in the Bible. However, that is what people call it in the secular society. Okay, but they don't know it to be Armageddon. Now, when you go into Joel chapter 3, starting in verse 1, it says, the nations will be judged. It says, for behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations. Hence the reason why the end game for all nations. I'll also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Okay, so this is the this is the reason that the Most High is doing this. Okay, he's doing this as a plea to his people. Okay, his people that have been scattered among the nations. Okay, so that shows you that the prophecy that these people believe has been fulfilled. They want to believe that the people that's currently in the land claiming themselves to be us, that they're the people that whom this Bible is talking about. No, according to this, the Israelites are still scattered among the nations, and their land has been parted. Okay, now we know the partition was also prophesied. Okay. Let's see if we can get this. Yeah, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding, you know, the prophecy, especially like in the Christian church. So a lot of these things, when they read it, they believe it already came to pass. They already believe it happened. And that's part of the reason why they're confused. They're confused when the events that are going on today, and some of this confusion is actually going to be part of their motivations as to why they do some of the things that they do. Okay, so let me get this real quick. We'll get back to Joel. Okay, so this is a prophecy, okay, against Mount Seir, okay, which is Esau, the governing body of Esau. Mount Seir, meaning his ancient habitation. But your ancient habitation, your name follows you wherever you go. You never remove yourself in anybody that understands Bible speak, which is very consistent, that the Most High will call a nation by their ancient cities that they originally inhabited, even if they're not there anymore. He'll still keep that name upon them because that's how he views them. And this takes away the confusion when it comes to understanding the Bible itself. When you understand that when it's talking about Mount Seir, it's not talking about the people that currently are living in modern day Jordan. Okay, it's talking about the actual people group who initially got that as an inheritance during the time of the Old Testament. Okay, so when you go, we'll kind of go into verse 10. Okay, you can read the whole thing yourself, but I want to make sure I kind of keep this a little bit more concise. Now, this is Ezekiel chapter 35, verse 10, because thou hast said, these two nations and these two countries should be mine, and we will possess it. Whereas the Lord was here. What two countries and nations? Judah and Israel. Okay, so the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, along with their respective lands. Okay, the land of Judah, the land of Israel. Also, some of us know as the northern and southern kingdom. And this is about Esau possessing the people and the land. That was one of their main motivating factors during the Renaissance, was to ensure that they went out to the world, conquered, and they took down the children of Israel. Okay, this is well documented. As we know, the bulk of the 10 tribes came over here to the Americas. Okay, this is prophesied in 2nd Esdras. Okay, this is also alluded to even in the book of the Old Testament. Okay, where the prophecy was that they'll be cast into another land, which is Arseth. Okay, which is also known as another land. Which Moses knew that, because Moses was shown that this would happen. In addition to that, the prayer of Solomon in 1 Kings chapter 8, same concept, okay? Same prayer about the people being cast into another land and also being scattered among the nations, which was also prophesied in the law as well, even before we got into the land. It was in Deuteronomy. So these things were prophesied. The various prophets prophesied about us being scattered, right? We see Joel also talks about how we were scattered. Okay, so now let's go into, we'll just go over to the next chapter, Ezekiel chapter 36 and 5. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, surely in the fire of my jealousy have I spoken against the residue of the heathen and against all Idumea. That's Edom. Okay, Idumea is just another way of saying Edom, which have appointed my land into their possession with the joy of all their heart, with despiteful minds, and cast it for a prey. Okay, so this is what they did. Okay, so this proves that in the last days that the Edomites would appoint the land into their possession. A lot of these, when you get towards the end of the book of Ezekiel, and really a lot of Ezekiel is a successive prophecy. It's really like a timeline of what would occur. When you go chapter to chapter, it literally just keeps lining up, right? So after they appoint the land into their possession, which they already did, what happens is a great awakening. That's Ezekiel 37. Okay. Then Ezekiel 38, the rise of Gog and Magog, as far as getting the alliance of the different nations. Hence the reason why we have the image. Okay. Okay. That's why we have the image of the different nations on the little Star Wars, not Star Wars, but you could say the Street Fighter, the Street Fighters. Okay. Each nation of people representing their respective people groups and their interests for this battle. Okay. Now, as you go further on, it says prophesy therefore concerning the land of Israel, because they took it over. It tells you Edom took it over, and say unto the mountains and to the hills, to the rivers and to the valleys, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because ye have borne the shame of the heathen. Yeah, because they have the worst of the heathen occupying the land and calling themselves the people of the book. And they're doing all kind of atrocities and abominations on that land. Okay. We don't have to go deep into it, but some of you already know. So the shame is being brought to the land. Everybody's even hating the land. People look at the land in disdain because of the people that are there upon. Okay. The Edomites. Okay. We like to call them the small hats, and we know that they're backed up by the big hats. Yeah, we got to keep it a little bit censored, but what is understood does not need to be explained. So that's kind of who we're dealing with. And the prophecy continues that, as you keep reading down, it tells the land that, hey, I'm going to bring back the people of Israel and I'm going to multiply them upon you. Okay. So this is what is being told to the land. Okay. Because the land has an energy. The land is a living being. A lot of Israelites don't even know that the land is a living being. It has actual living force within it. Okay. So this is not just, hip talk or, metaphorically speaking. No, the land actually misses the rightful inhabitants that it has been that was promised to, be upon it, the children of Israel. Okay. This promise goes back all the way to Abraham and his descendants through Isaac, through Jacob, and the patriarchs. Okay. So this is very important to understand this when you're looking at this war of Armageddon. Okay. The greatest war in the history of humankind. That's what it will be known as. Okay. It's going to be greater than World War I, greater than World War II. It's going to affect the entire globe. Okay. Because of some of the reasons behind why these nations will be fighting, and which makes a lot of sense. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to that Joel. And we'll go down to verse 3. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for an harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Okay. So basically, not trying to get too graphic, but basically this is what they did with our people, with the boys and the girls. Okay. See, when this stuff was happening, you don't think that these people was on that, weirdo stuff back then, even as they are today. Some of y'all think that the Epstein file behavior is recent history. Okay. They've been on this type of time. Okay. Some of these other nations even participated in stuff because they believe, some of these different groups, they believe that they should have access to boys as well as prepossessing girls and grown women and even grown men. But this is some of the stuff that they did, and the Most High took account of that, of these atrocities that they did. When everybody is upset about the Epstein files, what was going on the plantations of the Americas. See, they want you to believe that the stuff that was going on in the plantations and the places and palaces and the buildings and the homes around the world where our people were scattered to, they don't want you to believe that the only type of behavior that was happening is what you saw in, movies like 12 Years a Slave and Amistad and Roots. You just think it was just grown women who were in their 20s and 30s that were being, violated. That's what they want you to think. They don't want you to think about the other types of people violated: men, boys, and little girls, and infants. Yes, this is how sick it got, and the Most High knows that. Okay, see, I see Nate. I seen Nate one time going into Joel 3, and every time he goes into Joel 3, he says that the boy was they was for breeding. They made him a breeder. I'm like, huh? No, they made a boy a harlot. Meaning being used for carnal pleasures. And of course, they did the same with the girls. So it wasn't that. That's why sometimes when you brothers watch these other groups and they start coming up with these weird breakdowns, you got to shake that stuff off. You got to know what's real and what's not. Okay, we got to be speaking the same thing, because if somebody comes to you and say to break this down, you got a whole different doctrine, then you're going to be in conflict with the proper reasoning. Verse 4, yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will ye render me a recompense? If you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head. Okay, so this is not talking about I've actually seen this broken down wrong so many times by different groups. Tyre and Zidon is referring to the Canaanites that occupied Tyre and Zidon going back into the ancient world. Like I said before, those particular groups are being called by their ancient cities, no matter where they went, okay, for what they did. Okay, so this is the reason why, even when it comes to the discussion of the slave trade, they actually rewrote some of the history to make you, in modern times, they kind of rewrote it to make it seem like our people were trading our own people into slavery. But if you go into like the 17th and 18th century writings when it was happening, Esau didn't say that that's how it was going down. He was saying that these particular group was being traded by this particular group. Okay, and a lot of people won't even understand that. So those people have to get punished for that. And they're also actively in opposition to the rising up of the children of Israel. And then it says all the coasts of Palestine is referring to the Philistines. It's not referring to the Arabs. I do not know where this guy, I seen it so many times. She said all the coasts of the Palestinians. That's talking about the Arabs. And this is that's like an old One West breakdown, because Tahar says the same thing. Maybe he's changed it recently. Maybe he probably saw one of our videos and maybe switched it up, like we've seen them do when we had the proper breakdown of certain things. They denied it and then later switched it up. But hey, all praises, as long as they are, being in more pursuit of truth, we have no problem with that. But I've seen him and Nathaniel of IUIC saying that all the coast of Palestine is referring to the Arabs. It's not talking about the Arabs. Okay, in this instance, not in this particular instance. Now, we know they talk about the nations that joined together against Israel in the book of Psalms. Yes, they're part of that too. Okay, however, for the sake of discussion, scriptural consistency, we have to stick with this consistency, because remember, the Philistines occupied the coast, what would be known as the Gaza Strip and further higher, Ashdod and all of them. Okay, that's where they originally were. Remember, when this was written, this prophecy, this will be understood by the prophets. That's why you have to think like the prophets. Let me see if I can pull up a map. Would like to use ChatGPT to create one, but they might mess up. Sometimes ChatGPT don't be, you know. Oh yeah, ancient map. What the heck? I remember Sidon is the firstborn of Canaan. Okay, that is. Let's see if we could pull this up. I don't know why it's doing that. I get funny style sometimes. Sometimes when you attempt to open up some of these things, it actually doesn't work properly. Okay. So you see here, and I'm glad I pulled this up because, got to get proper context for you brothers so you can understand. One of the things you also talk about is understanding maps as well. So as you see here at the very top, you have Tyre and Zidon, which is in modern day Lebanon, and that area was known as Phoenicia. Okay, now it's known as Phoenicia during the time of the Greeks. Okay, that was also known as, the land of Canaan, or part of the land of Canaan. That's pretty much where the bulk of those that didn't, as you know, we in the land of Israel, we weren't able to conquer all of the heathen that was in the land, especially the Canaanites. Okay, so some of them dwelt in certain towns within our borders, but a bulk of them that did survive ended up in the northern part, which was in Tyre and Zidon, and then that's when they kind of continued building from there. Okay, that's why when you get into the book of Kings, you see about Hiram, the prince of Tyre, okay, who was like an important figure in that time period. Okay, of course, you remember it was him that Solomon commissioned to bring servants of the Canaanites from that land of Tyre and Zidon that would help build the temple, bring in all the cedars of Lebanon, all of the wood, bring them down, okay, and build up Solomon's house, build up the different aspects within the temple, because they were master masons, okay, and of course Solomon was given the blueprint by the Most High on how the temple ought to be built. Okay, so they were bearing the burdens. Remember, this is when we were at our highest peak during that time, in the time of the 40 years of peace under Solomon. Okay, and that's when we were reigning upon the earth until, of course, the fall of Solomon, in terms of the idolatry, the splitting of the kingdom, and of course, the different captivities. So this is what it's talking about when it says Tyre and Zidon. This area, modern day Lebanon, or Libanus, is also called in the Bible, okay, which is where those particular people groups stayed. All right. So let me see if we can pull up also. Let me see, because sometimes these people, they don't get the maps right. So I'm going to see if they can find the actual proper ancient map of the Philistines, and we'll also show that as well. So I want to get a proper map so you brothers and sisters could know what we're talking about. And you'll have a good idea. Just want to make sure we get a very good one, a very solid map. Oh, this is pretty good. I think all the cities are here. This actually might work. I'm seeing a couple of good maps. So let's see how this works. View image. Okay, so here, as you can see, the image of all the coast of the Philistines. Okay, this is where they stayed in the ancient world. Okay, this is during the time of Samuel, Saul, David, and Solomon. Okay, you can read about these different battles. That's what sometimes when you read the Bible, all these different cities and towns, when you read it, you need to have a map of it, because when they say Ashdod, you're not even thinking about where Ashdod is. You're just reading the Bible or listening to the Bible without a frame of reference. You need a frame of reference so you can kind of better understand and immerse yourself in that time. This is the reason why you have people like Nate. They don't, for whatever reason, Nate or who he learned from didn't bring this knowledge to them properly. Okay. Look at the cities that they had. I believe they had 5 cities within their borders that they occupied. Okay, that is Ekron, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gaza, and Gerar. Okay, or Gerar. Okay, so Gaza, the Gaza Strip as it is today, was part of the ancient land of the Philistines. When you're reading Joel chapter 3, it is not talking about the current people that is over in that land. Okay? It's not talking about them. Okay? It's very important to understand this, please. It's very important to understand this, Akim. Especially for you brothers that are watching, wanting to learn, wanting to build up your knowledge, your knowledge base. So that way, when you hear these other people talk, okay, that's incorrect. And, I saw the lesson from the Ak. The Ak showed me and gave me a proper frame of reference. So that way I know what it is that, when it's talking about that particular prophecy. Because guess what? A lot of people are going to be using that. And if you see some of these other groups, they're going to be using that particular precept, and most of them will use it wrong. Okay, we're one of the few, thanks to the Most High, that have opened up our eyes that understand this. Okay, and I got another map, as you can see here, same map, and if you look at it, what does it say? The Philistines at the time of David. Okay, so at the time of David, and you can read about these different cities. Okay, if you go through the book of Samuel, the book of Kings, you will see these cities. You'll see where the pitched battle happened between the Philistines and the Israelites, the first major one, and how, the Philistines took down a lot of our people in that battle, and then they geared up for battle, and David, took down Goliath, and then that increased the tension between the two sides. A lot of these Israelite groups, they present things in a way that makes you just think we were always winning. But we had tough battles with our neighbors, these heathen nations. Okay, they were formidable foes. If you don't know, read the Bible. Okay, so we had to. That's why, even though we are great people, we still need, our power to help us win battles. Okay, because He is the Lord of hosts at the end of the day, and hence the reason why He's going to bring about World War III. All right. Yeah, so that's just how it is. So hopefully y'all understood that part. Okay. Now, why is he against those nations? He specifically called out those nations because of the slave trade that they engaged in. Okay, not only in ancient times, you can read about some of that in I believe it's the Book of Maccabees. Okay, in the Book of Maccabees, is actually a section that talks about how some of us during that time were sold into slavery by them. Okay, to the Greeks. Okay, that the ports was filled with our people. That's how some of us ended in Europe during the time of the Maccabees. That's how some of us ended up in places like Ephesus and all them other areas, all those areas that you seen Paul go through. Some of those were our descendants of our people that were taken captives into those other areas. Okay. And then those ended up forming their own communities later as they were freed, although some of them were never freed. Right. So when you go into verse 5, it says, because ye have taken my silver and my gold and have carried it into your temples, my goodly, pleasant things. The children also of Judah and Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians. Okay, which this is documented in the Book of Maccabees. Okay, let's see. Do this real quick. I don't even know why. For whatever reason. If you want to do, okay, here it is. New chat. Let's see if we could get this going. That's what I like about this. You know how to ask questions on ChatGPT. You can get some real concise stuff. So let's see if we can get that real quick, Aki. Part of it. Remember, knowledge shall increase. I'm telling you, brothers, man, ChatGPT, if you know how to use it, this could really be influential in your studying and your understanding. So let's see here. What part of the Book of Maccabees were the Jews sold to slavery? Well, they're eventually sold. I don't know why it's saying it didn't happen. Okay, but when you go into it, let me pull this up real quick. Let's go to the Book of Maccabees. Came out the Apocrypha, and of course, as you know, over time, because the period of the Apocrypha, the time of the Maccabees, anytime you would go to war against the heathen and you lost, some of the cities were raided, those people would be taken captive. And one of the reasons why I told you that the ChatGPT and some of these search engines won't give you the full story, because they have a hard time looking at the people that they call Jews today. They have a hard time looking at them as being enslaved and captive people. It's easy to just say that they were just slaves in Egypt and look at them as just pretty much, migrants in other lands into other captivities. They have a hard time doing that. So a lot of times they don't even want to get to the nitty gritty, because if you ask a small hat, they're not going to talk about this. They're not going to talk about this stuff, even though in wars and battles, stuff went down. So I'm going to do this. This is in the Book of Maccabees, chapter 3. I'm going to start at verse 38. Then Lysaeus chose Ptolemy, the son of Doramenus, Nicanor, and Georgius, mighty men of the king's friends. With them he sent 40,000 footmen and 7,000 horsemen to go into the land of Judah and to destroy it as the king commanded. So they went forth with all their power and came and pitched by Emmaus in the plain country. And the merchants of the country, hearing the fame of them, hearing the fame of these Edomites, these Greekish Edomites, we'll just call them that, hearing the fame of them, took silver and gold very much with servants, and came into the camp to buy the children of Israel for slaves. A power also of Syria and of the land of the Philistines joined themselves unto them. So the Syrians and the Philistines came also. Okay. So it says now if you go on, you'll see what happened. But when you go into this, even though it didn't go down, you got to remember that later on, or in time in history and in time past, it went down, right? And how do we know this? We know this because you have those that are mentioned as former slaves, the Church of the Libertas or Libertarians, which are those that were freed captives. That's actually one of the churches that was mentioned or people written to in one of the epistles in the New Testament. Also, we know that when you go into the Bible, we know that slavery was throughout the history. When you go into the Roman period, it continued. Many of our people became slaves, became captives. Okay. And we were targeted heavily for that. Now, the Grecians, the word for the Grecians is not necessarily talking about the actual ethnic or the biblical people of Japheth, Yawan, as it would be called in the Hebrew, but it's referring to the Grecians as in the Edomites that occupied Greece. Remember that the Edomites were occupying places like Macedonia and the Greek Isles. Hymen the Agagite of Macedonia. We went over that during the time of Purim, during the time of Esther, going into that period and understanding who were the Grecians, who would be those that would be buying, who would be selling. And it tells you that every time there's an opportunity, you go in verse 41, every time there's an opportunity to buy Israelites as slaves, these other nations join, including the land of the Philistines, which is the coast thereof. So they participated in our demise, hence the reason why the Most High is against them. Now, let's go further on. And the reason why they did this, one of the reasons why they wanted to do this, that they may remove them far from their border, as you see there in verse 6. So it says, now, ultimately, that's what happened. All these different people groups collaborated, The Canaanites, those of Tyre and Zidon, the Philistines, those that inhabited the original coast, even though they later migrated. And this is something that I'll get into as far as documentation, book documentation source of who these people groups are today. I'll do that in another time. They collaborated with the Edomites, who are being called the Grecians in this particular format. And this occurred, of course, during the time of the Renaissance period, the transatlantic slave trade and all that, right? So that's when it ultimately was fulfilled on a bigger scale. Verse 7. Now remember, this is the motivation behind why the Most High is doing this war. We'll get into next why the other nations are going to get into and get involved in World War III. But we're still into why the Most High is setting up that stage for World War III or Armageddon. So verse 7 says, behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, which was far from their borders, that's key, into a land that thou knowest not, according to the prophecies. And not only that, scattering them. Because remember, you saw scattering, how people scattered, not just through slavery, through being chased by the sword, through economic hardships and oppression, Okay, that would cause people to leave and migrate out of the lands. Okay, so they may not all be captive. They may be just what you called economic migrants, which is a very common thing for our people. You know, you got people out here that talk about don't flee, but everybody's people flee and went to some place or another at one point for survival. And there's no thing different with the children of Israel. In fact, that is part of our story. Okay, this is part of our history. Now, when you go into verse 8, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, which is future prophecy, because it hasn't been fulfilled. You got these Christians and some of these other people say, oh, it's already been fulfilled. Into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians, to a people far off, for Yahweh hath spoken it. Okay, that's what's going to happen to them. That's one of the ways that they'll be recompensed. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into that. If you want to dig deep, okay, go and you can look into and see if y'all can find out who the Sabians are. Okay. Okay, the Sabians are, you know, the people that's associated with the Queen of Sheba. Okay, so very interesting history, and also look at where they stand in the end times. I recommend that y'all do that research yourselves. That's a little, you know, thing that y'all can uncover on your own time. So here it is. The big kahuna. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles. Prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the mighty men of war draw near. Let them come up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's look at that image again, right? This is that image of the nations. Let's see if we can get a better, hold on. Let me do this because the image is looking kind of covering up one of them. I can move one of them over. Let me see if this will work. Okay, there it is. All right, so as you see there, you got Captain America, okay? And you got Ivan Drago, okay? You feel me? You got the other nations, okay? These are just representatives of the other nations. Try to make them have a diversity of looks. We got, now remember, you know, don't feel, what do you call it, some type of way. Okay, our people have been scattered among all nations. Therefore, they're going to look variegated like this. See, these are just what are the quote unquote somewhat ethnic, you know, somewhat so-called biblical, racial, or ethnic phenotypes. I don't know how it did it. I tried to make them, you know, do it a certain way. And I don't know if it came out, but if y'all, just for the sake of those that y'all might be wondering, I believe, well, we know we're right here. What I had was America. Okay, this will also represent the NATO bloc and the small hats. Okay, so this is one aspect of Edom. This is supposed to be Ammon, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, as you know, just had the different coalition of nations and people groups. It was nothing major, but I don't think it came very close. You know, the commands is not really, it's really hard to get the commands, but I think you can kind of probably peep that maybe this is like a Sikh Indian or a Pakistani. Okay, this is like an Arab. Okay, you see what he got here. Okay, got an Ethiopian or Kush, got Moab. And like I said, we're speaking from, you know, a hypothetical perspective. This doesn't mean that all people groups look like this. It doesn't mean that Israelites can't look like any of these men. Okay, and I think that might be one of the hardest things I can ever explain, and I don't think the majority of the people that hear from me will ever get what I'm saying. So they'll just kind of stick with this thinking that I'm just saying this person, if you look like this, you're this. If you look like that, you're that. You know what I'm saying? And we're a lot deeper than that. Okay, but this is just a representation of the different nations, okay, that the Most High will gather up. And this is a global representation. Okay, this is pretty much how the world of people look like. You know what I'm saying? This is pretty much how the nations look. Okay, as far as the nations of the world, the countries of the world, the people groups of the world. There's some overlap with different groups of people, you know what I'm saying? But this is a general look. So, and the reason why I'm doing that, because we're showing you that this is going to be a world war. It's not going to be two European factions and, the alliance, the triple alliance, and the axis of powers, the Axis powers, and the, all the stuff that they had during World War I and World War II, if you know, right? So, or the Cold War, the West versus the Soviet bloc, or the Iron Curtain, like all these different talks that you had, these factions back then that were predicated just on that. And it's a continuation of that. But this one is very important for us to understand, because now all nations are involved. Okay. And they have all their reasonings behind why they're involved as well, because they're going to have to be motivated. The battleground that the Most High is setting up, they're going to all have their own motivations as to why. Some of them are similar. Okay. And still be coalitions among each other, but some of them are different. Okay. And they're in opposing, and those are in strong opposition in terms of each nation's end game objective in this war. That'll determine where they stand within this. And it gets a little bit more complex. I might have to do another series that deals with the actual, factions and the alliances and how things can probably break up and things like that according to the Bible. But that's pretty much how it is. So these are the mighty men, okay, prepared for war. Okay. And there are certain things that I kind of want to get into as well later on in another subject, as far as how would the battlefield look? What would be the kind of things that would be used and brought, and why would things work and not work? These are things that we could talk about in a later time. So let's go ahead and go back. Let's put up that Joel. Yeah. All right. So verse 10, beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. So this is all the nations, even the weak nations, investing in military. Okay. Why are they investing in military? Okay. Why would these nations need to invest in swords, weapons, spears? These are all just terms for weapons. Remember, this is an ancient prophecy. There was no such thing as a gun. The word gun was not in existence in the lexicon of the world. Okay. And they have even words. These words are different in different countries. Okay. But what was known as a gun, that didn't exist. Okay. A spear is a long range weapon. Okay. It allows a regular ancient spear could, be, probably up to 6 feet in, height and even taller. And you can literally be on one side of the room and you can hit somebody with a spear and still have it in your hand. And you can be super far away. You can even throw it. It's a throwing weapon. You can throw it and it can hit somebody. It's weighted in the beginning. It has a weight to it. If it hits you, you could be gone. Right. So these are just talks. A lot of people, they'll read this and they'll be thinking, oh, this has already happened, because it's talking about swords and spears. But those of us that have been enlightened, illuminated, those that have been given the unction that comes from the Holy Spirit, which guides us unto all truth, knows that this is just a figure of speech just dealing with weapons, a war. Okay? So all the nations, even the weak nations, are going to say they're strong. They're going to believe in themselves that they're capable of battle. They're going to get their military game up. Okay? Why? The reason why they're going to do that is because of this. In fact, let's see if we can, I'm going to actually pull this up, get some definitions. Okay. I want to see if we can get some definitions. And this is, in fact, I'm going to do this. Okay. This is why all nations are going to do this. This is one of the motivating factors. I'm going to go into the other ones as well. Okay, so bear with me. All right, so as you see here, okay, what I just did, let me see if I can change this because this is kind of out the way. All right, so as you see here, it says, and this is from Bing.com. I just simply typed in existential threat. Okay, see, Copilot Search says an existential threat is a risk that could either cause human extinction or permanently or drastically curtail humanity's long-term potential. Now, this also includes people groups. Okay, a people group could be facing an existential crisis, which would cause them to gear up militarily to protect their own existence and the existence of their future, of their families. Okay, and you could just see this on a smaller scale with the likes of, Hamas, Hezbollah. These are two factions, just on a smaller scale, that of groups that believe that they're facing an existential threat, which means the extinction or the destruction of their own people. And when groups of people are pushed back to the wall and their threat of their existence is threatened, they will gear up for war. This is a motivating factor for all the nations, even the strong ones, why they will engage in this battle, because they know if they lose, that they could be relegated to the bottom of the world. And they know that that's not a place that they want to be. So they also are going to be fighting for their own survival. It's a survivalist war. Okay. And we're going to go into some of the reasons why it's a survivalist war. Let's continue reading. Okay. An existential threat refers to any event or process that could either destroy humanity outright or irreversibly lock humanity into a drastically inferior state. Now, this also includes, again, nation states. Okay. This is a term that's used by Scott Ritter when he talks about the conflict that Russia has with Ukraine, which is a proxy war of NATO. The threat that Russia is facing with Ukraine was an existential threat. Why? Because NATO's borders were attempted to extend further east, which was against the original agreement that they would not go any further eastward, but they kept on going eastward and adding more nations under NATO. And under Article 5 of the UN Charter, let me see if we can pull that up. See, this is what some brothers got to know about. You know what I'm saying? So let me bring up Article 5 of the NATO Charter. So I think I said UN. Article 5, NATO Treaty. Okay, and mind you, this is what they're trying to play into Russia's hands to basically cause them to try and attack a NATO member. Okay, so when you read this is Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, commits NATO members to collective defense, declaring that an armed attack against one member is considered an attack against all. Okay, so basically they signed this particular agreement, Article 5, back in 1949. Okay, this really is staged off the Cold War. Okay, this is the reason why you had the Iron Curtain. Okay, and this is all part of the history, even when you go into Ezekiel 38, which we're not going to get deep into. We're not going to get into that today, because some of these things have to be done piecemeal. Okay, because I don't want to cause y'all to get lulled to sleep. Those of y'all that are very passionate about this subject, you'll listen to this whole thing, you'll get gamed up on it, right? So let's see. Let me see if we can pull up a map. There's a lot of noise going on here. I think these are some of these kids playing around outside, making a gang of noise. It's ridiculous. I don't know what they on. So let me see if I can pull up a good map. This might work. Golly, where did it go? I tried to pull up the map, but for whatever reason, the map don't want to participate. Okay, we'll just use this. Let me see if I can pull it up in another window. Okay, y'all see that? So this right here is a map. Okay, this is during the Cold War. Okay, and this map you see in blue, that's for whatever reason, I don't know why they did it wrong. The Western and Eastern bloc is wrong on this map. Crazy. Well, anyway, in blue, this is the West, and this is pretty much the Soviet bloc. Okay, and as you know, a lot of y'all that maybe are familiar with that history, if you're older, a lot of you younger brothers may not be familiar, but at one point you had a split, and there was East Germany and West Germany. Okay, so they operated as separate countries. Okay, some of y'all may have never heard that before. And this is the history before a lot of y'all were either born or you were too young to understand it. Okay, about the Berlin Wall coming down. Now, this right here came down because of the dissolution of the Soviet bloc. Okay, the Soviet Union fell, it split up, and Russia became separate. Now, what happened is over time, NATO expanded eastward to include as far east as Poland. Okay, and Poland, it borders Ukraine. Ukraine is right here. Okay, it's a huge country. I believe it's the largest country in Europe, if you don't count the European side of Russia. But really the largest country, I think by land mass, I believe is Ukraine. So Ukraine is a huge country. Okay, it's one of the Soviet republics. Because remember, it's called the Soviet Union because all these different other countries were part of the Soviet. There were all Soviet republics that were part of what's called the Soviet Union. Okay, that's important for you to understand when it comes to the alliance that Russia's going to have. Okay, because Russia's going to have an alliance with former Soviet blocs because they have trade interests. They also have interests in regards to existential threats. Okay, so as you see here, Poland being next to Ukraine, which would be right here, there was an attempt by NATO to expand further and to take on Ukraine, which Russia objected to. Because as soon as a NATO country joins NATO, they then will have a NATO military. They can also stage missiles right on the border of Russia. And that's why Russia is trying to take over the Russian parts of Ukraine, which we talked about in the past, which they already occupied Crimea. They're trying to take, they're trying to basically cut off Ukraine now from the Black Sea, and to try and make them a buffer state. Okay, up here further north, you got like Belarus. Like Belarus is like up here, which is a Russian ally. So there's a lot of stuff that has transpired over time, and all of these are done in part, or all the actions of each side is done in part to dominate another group of people, to maintain their hegemony and their existence at the expense of others. And then others are fighting against that very thing. Okay, they're rising up against it because for them it's an existential threat. This is the reason why Russia is willing to sacrifice many men on the battlefield in Ukraine, okay, to get their objectives done. And among the things, like I said, in time past, that they're trying to do is they're actually trying to do a war of attrition where they would whittle out the entire military fighting force of Ukraine. So that way, by the time that they get the victory, there is no army for Ukraine to use. And the only next thing is for NATO to get their army together to fight. But they need Article 5 to happen. They want an actual attack on one of the NATO countries so that all the NATO countries, including the United States, who's not on this map, they're the number one NATO country, will have to join forces to fight against that attack that would be upon them. And that would then make for a larger war, which is among the theaters of war as well. Okay. The European theater of war is really built on the Russia beef with NATO. Okay. And it goes back to the Cold War times and some of the agreements that have been overstepped during the original breaking up of the Soviet Union, that there will be no more Eastern expansion. You can read about this in the Minsk Agreement. Okay. You can also read about this in many articles about, when Putin came into power, or initially, this is one of the things that he was trying to prevent, was a conflict between NATO and Russia. And NATO has not been listening because, again, NATO has New World Order objectives. So they have their own agenda as to why they want to do certain things. So let's go ahead and go back. Okay. So verse 11, assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen and gather yourselves together round about thither, cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh. Let the heathen be awakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there I will sit to judge all the heathen round about. Okay, put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Other nations' wickedness is great, particularly the nation of Edom. Okay, the nations have many motivations also to fight in this battle. And then we talk about the existential threat. Now, why is there an existential threat? Energy. Okay, I talked about this in one of my older videos. I want to say maybe a year or two ago. Thomas Malthus, about food production, controlling energy, controlling money. As you know, the modern system, the economies of the world are built on how energy is used. Access to energy is very important for the survival of a group of people. What the elites of Edom are attempting to do with all these wars that they created in the Middle East, and even their war against Russia, is an attempt to control the energy supply. Okay, and by controlling the vast majority of the energy supply, the elites of Edom in the New World Order will be able to dictate terms, be able to tell nations what they can and can't do, and if they don't do it, they can cut off energy from them. This is the reason why they've had all these battles throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Okay, they want to get Libyan oil. They want the oil that is all throughout the Middle East. They want the gas as well, because oil and gas energy is the lifeblood of modern economies. Okay, this is how you increase production, through these energies. Because think about the reason why we're able to get the things that we have. The reason why we don't have to go and do certain things is because energy is being used. Instead of us using our own energy as human beings to get certain things done, we have other means of using other forms of energy that can help us get more things done more efficiently and get us to places more efficiently, right? If you have to go to work and walk to work because you can't, there's no oil and gas. Where are you going to work for when a lot of the things you do at work is based off of energy too? Office can't be open. Your internet browser, if you work on a computer desk in a cubicle somewhere, where's your energy going to come from? Right? When you need energy to supply these things. Okay. And energy has an overlapping thing because you have diversity of energies, renewable sources, nuclear resources, oil, gas. Okay. You have wind turbines, you have dams. Okay. So these are all parts of energy resources, but what is the bulk? What is the biggest? What is the one that the world lives for? Okay. Oil. Oil primarily and secondarily natural gas. Okay. These are important. So these nations, all these nations will be facing an existential threat if they're not able to get access to these resources. This is among the things, is the reason why these nations are going to come from far. They're going to join in alliances. Okay. Russia's going to call, Ibrahim Traore and whoever else and be like, hey, you have to join in this battle because your existence of your people is on the line. Okay. And then other groups, all these different groups will send their armies to this battle. Okay. All these different groups will have to send their people. You see a lot of the oil that's supposed to be coming out of the Strait of Hormuz, it goes, a lot of the energy that the Eastern world or Asia gets actually comes from that Strait of Hormuz. We get a certain amount that's important that'll affect us if it doesn't get to the States. But a lot of these countries in Europe and throughout Asia, they need it. Throughout Africa, they need it as well. Okay, there's a lot of deep things that people don't understand from an economic standpoint as to what's driving these things. But ultimately, it's really the existential threat that your people could be pretty much relegated to, pretty much the Stone Age. Imagine if you're relegated to Stone Age type of energy, you're basically in threat of being invaded. There's a reason why even some of these powerful nations like the NATO nations, China and all these other groups, they don't even invade certain third world countries, because at the end of the day, third world countries got modern warfare. They don't mind have the fighter planes, but they can cause a lot of problems. And sometimes it's not even worth fighting even some of these relatively smaller nations because they do got a large manpower. They also got access to weapons. Okay, they also have desires to control their own territory. So now you've got more motivation to not be conquered. So therefore, you're going to put up a stronger fight. It's an existential crisis, right? So you're going to and then you're going to have allies that will use those opportunities, stronger allies, and say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to create, to strengthen these people so that way they can war against this stronger nation, and hopefully that war will weaken them. If you want to give a good example, look at Vietnam, third world country, rice farmers in the jungles of Southeast Asia, armed to the T, with motivation, facing an existential threat. Okay, what they call the Viet Cong, backed up by communist forces to fight against those who are backed by democratic forces. The United States sent the military there, sent a lot of soldiers, had a draft. That was the last time we had a draft, by the way, which is one of the things we talked about in one of the other videos. And they sent men to fight that, and those men died in their tens and thousands, injured in their hundreds of thousands. Okay, which led to the death of the image of America being this great power militarily. Even though they were strong, this kind of made other nations say, hey, we could probably fight these people. Okay, and it gave them courage. And now the courage is even more needed as they face globally existential threats, right? When it comes to their livelihood, their future of their children, whom they love as well. They're humans. They want to see their children live a better life or not live a life that's worse than theirs. So they'll be motivated. And then we got another reason. And let me see if we can find that as well. So we already went to the existential threat, okay, meaning the motivating for the sake of survival. In fact, did I have any more? Hold up. Let me make sure. I got to close some of these maps. Okay, we talked about the Article 5. Okay, basically a mutual security pact for the NATO nations. Yeah, let's go back to this one real quick, and then I'll get the yeah, we'll have to get that. Yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this going back to the existential threat, right? And they're making it seem as just a global thing, but it's more individualistic, national, and also from a perspective of, ethnic. There's all kinds of reasons why people would feel this way. Now, it says, unlike general global catastrophic risk, which may cause widespread harm, but also for eventual recovery, existential threats are terminal and permanent, making them uniquely severe. Examples include unrecoverable societal collapse, permanent dystopian regimes, or human extinction. That's crazy, right? Dystopian regimes. So meaning that if you don't fight, you could end up in a situation where you have a dystopian regime. Okay? Very, very interesting. Let me do this because we got this. That's an interesting. I like that right there. This is the political motivation. So imagine you have a political ideology that you believe is best. For example, Iran has an Islamic Republic, okay? They want to maintain an Islamic Republic. To them, something other than that would be lesser than or not, profitable for their survival, meaning a way that you run society, the way your leadership structure is. You got Saudi Arabia, they have a monarchy. Same thing with the United Arab Emirates. They have a monarchy. Okay, they're different emirs, they're different royal family. Same thing with Qatar. They have what's it called? So for them, if they lose that power as monarchies and, the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the political class, the elite political class views that as an existential threat, because if they have to be relegated to a different type of system, that's a threat to them. So they have a motivation to what? To preserve it. Okay. This can be said even when it comes to democracies or, socialist regimes or communist regimes. Okay. So let's do this. I'm going to do this. What are the characteristics? Because remember, a lot of countries don't want a democracy because they look at democracy as a state of weakness due to the behaviors of the West. Okay. Recently, Abraham Traore just said that he's against democracy and that democracy is not for his people. Recently just said that. Okay. But you listen to these Edomites over here, they swear up and down by democracy, but their version of democracy is basically, doing mass murder across the planet and pillaging resources from other countries. Okay, they tell you that they're going to free the girls of Iran, and they bomb their schools. Like, this is their idea of democracy. Very satanic, very demonic. But if you're Esau, the border of wickedness, what do we expect from them? All right. Yeah, this is going to be a good question. We're not, hopefully it doesn't get too deep. I might just hit the bullet points. So as you see there, of course, it says an unrecoverable societal collapse. We can imagine what that would look like. Human extinction, we can imagine what that would look like, although according to the Bible, that will not happen. So when you hear guys like Scott Ritter say there's a threat of that, if we don't get things right, the world can descend into all-out nuclear war and everyone will be destroyed and the human existence will be no more. He thinks that that's possible. Okay, but it's not. We know that's 100% not possible because the Bible says that it will still continue. Okay, the seed of Jacob will still be upon the earth. So human extinction is not one of the options. We know this. They don't, especially those that are thinking on that level, right? But a dystopian regime is something that a lot of these other countries are worried about, especially at the political level, socio-political level, socio-economics. They're looking at that could be a problem. So what I did, I just went ahead just for the sake of, getting a good understanding of that. This is from ChatGPT. I just said, what are the characteristics of a dystopian regime? All right. So dystopian, if you want to look at dystopianism, there's a movie. Oh my goodness, I forgot the name of the movie. I think the creator Beavis Butthead and King of the Hill. He did a movie back in the day, and it's basically about a dystopian future. Okay. Definitely a movie that you should watch. We're kind of really in that time right now, because a lot of things that were in that movie are very similar to what's going on today, oddly enough. Now, I talked about this yesterday with the brother, so it's cool that this came up. Now, as far as what I'll read here. Now, watch this. A dystopian regime isn't just a bad government. It's a system where power is structured to control, suppress, and reshape society in ways that strip people of autonomy, truth, and often humanity itself. Watch this. Across history, political theory, and literature, like 1984 or Brave New World, highly recommended that you read that book and or watch the movie. Okay, every brother that's into prophecy, every brother that's into the New World Order and wants to know what they're planning on doing, highly recommend that you watch this movie or read the book. This is something that was required reading it for some schools as well. But, people in that time when people were really reading books, this is a book that people were told to read. And it's very interesting that so many people, especially people that are older, millennials, Gen X, boomers, they know about this book. They read it. They even watched the movie. Yet they play right into a lot of the things that this book, 1984, Brave New World, was talking about. And they can't unsee it. They cannot undo their mind of what they're dealing with because they're so caught up in this belief in voting and participating in a democracy. Okay. But this is where this ultimately leads to. Okay. Now, what are some of the characteristics, right? 1, extreme centralization of power. Okay. This is basically a one world government when you look at what they're trying to create. Okay, a one world government. Power is concentrated in a single ruler, party, or elite class with little to no accountability. Think the Epstein class, Akim. Okay? And these are the people that want to rule over the rest of the world. You wonder why the rest of the world is standing up against them. Okay, when they say unconditional surrender to Iran, this is what they're saying. We're going to treat you how we want to treat you. Unconditional surrender is literally a threat to your existence. That is an existential threat. That's the reason why Iran is going as far as to say, you know what? We're going to block the oil. The whole world going to see $200 a barrel of oil. If we can't be free, none of you going to be free. Everybody suffer because it's an existential crisis to us. And since you don't see our existential crisis that we're facing, everybody faces an existential crisis. How about that? Oh, yeah. We're going to bring everybody to their knees because of the threat that we're feeling as a people. That's why Iran's moving up like that. That's why it tells you they're not going to regard neither silver or gold. Because silver and gold is not going to save them from the existential threat that they're facing at the hands of the West. That's how they view it. That's why they're going to be mounting up to the war. Continuing on. So no accountability. That means no meaningful elections or opposition. This means election. This means rigging of votes. Okay. This means no voting at all. So you either have, if they're meaning no meaningful elections, meaning that the elections are not valid. You participate in them, you're told the results, but the results are fake because they just want you to believe that you're participating. Also, removing the opposition. You can basically abolish political party and say we're the only party in town. We're the only party in town, baby. We Walmart. All you mom and pops, you out of there. We don't need you. They don't need you. We gonna serve the interests of the people the way we feel. Okay? What else? Laws applied arbitrarily. Okay? This is a thing. Listen, this is something that I know that's going on right now in the country. I ain't gonna go into it, probably on another page. If you know, you know. Laws applied arbitrarily means that you don't know what is right or wrong because laws are only applied when they feel like it needs to be applied. This person gets condemned for the same action as this person did. This person does this, and they're considered good. These people do that; they're considered bad. Same thing. Sometimes it's even to the point where somebody that's a part of a particular ethnic group / race or political class can be allowed to do certain things, and they're not persecuted for it. But if you do it or are accused of it, you're persecuted. This creates a system where authority isn't constrained, only exercised. Okay. Another one. A surveillance. This is 2. Surveillance and loss of privacy. Okay. Big Brother says it there. The all-seeing eye. Surveillance and loss of privacy. All your calls being monitored, all your texts being monitored, all your search engine stuff is being monitored. Mass surveillance, physical or digital. Okay. We talked about the digital ID. Okay. What is that tied to? Digital currency, the CBDC, Akim. Okay. Your digital footprint. Your global footprint. Wherever you go, they have a GPS signal on you. Wherever you take your phone. Okay. Wherever you take yourself, they are able to follow you. Right? Informants and citizen reporting systems. So this is, we talked about something back then. Jade Helm, Strong Cities Network. I don't even know if those videos are even still up because that goes back to like 2015. It's been like 11 years since I think I did some of those lessons. Okay, but you can look up Strong Cities Network. Look up Jade Helm. Okay, Helm standing for, I forgot what Jade meant, but Helm meant the home eradication of local militants. This goes back to the DHS, Department of Homeland Securities, okay, which is a part of this. But remember, the informants and citizen reporting systems, this even goes into the situation when you went to, that happened in 2020, CV19. Remember, the people that were controlling a lot of the behavior of the masses when it came to controlling mass were the citizens themselves. In fact, they would go to stores. They would go to the store, the person that worked at the store, and say, this guy's not wearing a mask, remove him. You go to work, they say, this guy refuses to wear a mask, remove him. They would report you. Okay. They would also say, if you're not, poked, if you didn't get the jump shot, we're going to report you. We're going to notate that. We're going to get rid of you. You're not going to be able to get this. You're not going to be able to go here. You're not going to be able to go there. All these things already in there. People are actively participating in it. Okay, falling for it. Says in fiction like 1984, this symbolized by Big Brother, but real world parallels exist in various authoritarian states. Okay. 3, suppression of dissent. Opposition isn't debated, it's eliminated. You got a problem with the way we're running things, you have the problem that this country is being ran, and you don't like it, pew, pew, you out. You saw this even in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was big on that. Look up Stalin and what he did. Look at how many of his political opponents he just eliminated. Okay? You can look, that's why I tell brothers, like, if you want to understand this, think Soviet regime and then put it on a global scale. And by the way, the Soviet regime had, the Soviet Union had one bank. By the way, they had one bank. They had one media. They didn't have competing independent media outlets. And when you put on that TV or that radio, it was all geared towards the mindset of the government. This is think North Korea. You feel me? Imprisonment, exile, executions of critics, banning of independent organizations. Even mild criticism can be treated as a threat to the state. Now, imagine all these nations. Some of these nations are going to realize that if they don't join that war, this could be their future on a global scale, that this can be imposed on them by another group of people, particularly the West, or even in their mind, it could be the Soviet bloc. It could be China, whatever it is that they feel. Remember, each nation is going to have their own reason as to why they're in the war of Armageddon and who they're going to side with within the war. Remember that. So you can be viewed, each side is going to view the other side as evil or having ill intent or malice towards their people, which they're going to view each other as opposing sides of facing an existential crisis and or threat. Okay, these are the motivations behind the nations. We'll get into some other ones. We got another motivation. So yeah, banning of independent organizations. So independent media gone. Organizations, political parties that are independent, oppositional, gone. Okay. So even mild criticism can be threatened as a threat to the state. Control of information and truth. Whew. Man, this is heavy. Boy, we getting real heavy right now. You know, it's funny. You know, we talk about this all the time about the importance of truth and control of information and truth. We actually dealt with this on a smaller scale among us. We're not even that deep, where men controlled certain aspects of information and truth of a situation to where they can manipulate it through their means of propaganda to undermine the objectives of the church. Okay, it's a very big thing. Now, this happens on a bigger scale as well. Okay, this is the reason why they have how is information controlled here in the U.S. Look up Sinclair Group. I actually did a lesson on Sinclair Group. It was actually flagged, that particular lesson. Okay, the media speaks the same thing. Remember, during the shutdown, if you watch the channel, these news reporters were saying the exact same thing. They started talking about how we're all in this together, global citizens. They had a concert with all these big stars where they were going to perform, and everybody was going to stay home around the world and watch it from TV. I don't know if some of y'all remember that. I forgot some of the artists, but they were big, huge artists. Okay, and it was all part of this brainwashing of the masses. You know, people were going through it, but they didn't know what was going on, right? And that was on a small scale. Okay, so in these regime manipulates reality itself. Okay, I think I even used the word reality versus perspective or perception. Perception versus reality is not the same thing. Somebody can perceive something, but it's not reality. Okay, and that's what they do. So propaganda replaces objective reporting. History is rewritten. Contradictions are normalized. Okay, they just contradict left and right. It just doesn't make any sense. But this is how they maintain power. Okay. The goal isn't just to control what people say, but what they believe is true. Okay. Number 5, dehumanization and loss of individual identity. Wow. Wow. This is heavy. This is heavier than I thought. I'm about to star this one. It's going to be a big one. I'm about to use this on a future lesson. Wow. This is heavy. It's real heavy, Akim. Like your boy Doc Brown used to say in Back to the Future. You know what I'm saying? Let me see here. Hold on. Yeah, I don't want to do that. I don't want to get a copyright unless I can get a little sound bite, you know what I'm saying? But I was able to use it on the other one, but I'm not going to chance it now. I don't want to have any issues with the stream. But those that know. This is heavy right here, man. 5, and this is something that we deal with as a people, especially those of us that have come to the knowledge of being Israelites, right? Dehumanization and loss of individual identity. Citizens are reduced to roles or categories, people treated as tools of the state, suppression of culture, religion, or identity, okay, which is happening to us as well, right? Emphasis on conformity over individuality. In dystopias, individuals often become numbers, classes, or functions. There's a movie called Divergent, okay? Let me see if we can do this. And I recommend that y'all watch this movie. And that's another dystopian movie, by the way. Very good movie. And by the way, a lot of stuff in these movies. Oh, hold on. Why did it? Okay. And this is a dystopian based movie as well. Highly recommend y'all watch this. Because when you watch some of these movies, it kind of gives you a different concepts in your mind to where you can understand what is being done on the earth. This is actually a purposeful objective that's occurring on the earth. It's not something that's like non-deliberate, like it's just happening organically. No, this is a very deliberate process of what they're trying to do. Okay, so in the movie Divergent, in the Divergent movie, society is divided into 5 distinct factions, which we just talked about. Okay, they want to divide it into distinct factions or classes. Dauntless, or erudite, agbination, amity, and candor, each representing a specific virtue and societal role. Now, I'm not going to go into this. You can watch the movie or you can look this up yourself. Highly recommend that y'all watch this movie. Very, very good. Okay. I will say that. Very good movie. It's a dystopian based movie. Okay. Let's go back to the tab. And we'll go to number 6. Militarization and use of fear. Force is always present, even if not always used. Okay. Heavy police or military presence. Public punishments to deter resistance. Constant messaging about threats, real or exaggerated. Fear becomes a governing tool. Okay. This is among the reasons why the nations are going to fight, because of this aspect of militarization. Who is doing this? Who's around the world with military bases in all the countries and all the time zones and all the longitudes and all the latitudes of the earth? Babylon. Okay? The presence, even if they don't use it, you know they're there. You know they got an aircraft carrier. You know they got a battleship, a carrier group. Okay? They got air forces, air force bases where they can launch attacks from. Okay? This is on a global level, Akim. Think about this. It's on a global level. Okay? This is a dystopian regime that we're under, basically. When you look at it on a global scale, think bigger, Akim. Think bigger. Okay? Number 7, economic control and inequality. The regime often controls resources and creates stark inequality. State-controlled or highly manipulated economy, privileged elite versus struggling masses, restricted access to jobs, food, or movement. Scarcity is sometimes engineered to maintain dependence. Very diabolical, Akim. Very diabolical. And that's what they're trying to do under a global dystopian regime, Akim. They're already doing that. Okay, let's go through the different points, right? It says regime often controls resources and creates stark inequality. Remember, Thomas Malthus talks about controlling of resources, controlling of food, the food supply. Okay, controlling of the energy resources. This is what this battle is about, Akim. This is among the existential threats that is being faced. It's the reason why the nations are going to come together to fight a war. The stuff that we're talking about. Okay, just some to varying levels of degree as to why they're doing it, but same thing, facing an existential threat. Now, state or tightly manipulated economy. Okay, the state-controlled tightly manipulated economy is stuff like you see what Trump is doing. He'll do these tweets, and the tweets cause ups and downs within the market, ups and downs within the price of Brent crude oil. That's manipulation. You're in the society right now. You're in it right now. Okay. State-controlled. People think about the communist-controlled economies, the division of labor, the means of production controlled by the state. Okay. These are things you can learn about when you look up older past or current countries and how they run their governments. Privileged elite versus the struggling masses. We have what we call in America the 1%. Then you have the global elite, okay, which we know at the end of the day is full of Esau, Edom. Okay, you know right now these proletariat Edomites, they call their 1%ers the Epstein class now. Same old people, the Illuminati, the Bavarian Illuminati. Okay, the same group of people. Okay, they got levels to that as well, by the way. Even at that 1%, they got levels. It ain't even all on the same levels to it. Okay. Also, you could look at feudalist systems as well. Same thing, privileged elite, struggling masses. Restricted access to jobs, food, or movement. Okay, how are they restricting it? Various means. Restricted could be done based off of your, ethnicity / gender, religion. People say gender, but here's the thing. The reason why gender doesn't make any sense because there's certain jobs women won't do. 2, men, when they have access to jobs and excess money, they tend to take care of women. Okay, they're not as selfish as the female gender. It just is what it is. But restricted access to jobs also can come in the way of if you have a felony, you're not able to work a certain job, right? If you committed a crime, certain jobs you don't have access to or you have less access to. Another thing, if you consider somebody that's against the government, political dissent, that's why they have a social credit score out there in China. Okay, if you do things that are against the regime in China, okay, then they can put you on a social credit score. That social credit score, if it's lower, can prevent you from working at certain jobs. Food restrictions, one of the things they're trying to do is rationing. We talked about this. Okay, United Nations talks about this. One of the reasons why they want a CBDC is to also have programmable money, where whenever you buy with your CBDC, because it's going to be programmable, you're not going to be able to overbuy certain food items. You might be restricted if you're single to 1 gallon of milk maybe every 2 weeks. You might be restricted to, 5 gallons of water a week as a one person. You might not be able to buy a certain amount of loaves of bread or vegetables or fruits or any meat and poultry. We're just speaking in hypothetically, but this is the stuff that they're trying to do. This is the reason why this is the reason why Bill Gates has bought up so much land. He's also invested in alternative food sources, such as, bugs that will be eaten for sustainable protein. Okay, think tells, what is it called? Alfred Hitchcock. The series that he had, they actually was an episode where they had the green stuff. I forgot what it's called. Did a lesson on it years back. Okay, but they had to eat that green stuff, man. Okay, to survive. This was given to them, rationed to them by the government. Okay, also restricted movement. We talked about that. I talked about that many times, Akim, freedom of movement. Okay, so imagine you're a nation. You're told, hey, you're not a good nation. You're not a good people group nation. We're restricting you from being able to fly. We're going to restrict your flights. You're not going to be able to fly here and there. How do they restrict movement? Through passports. Passports is one of the ways to restrict movements. You can't go here or there because you don't got the proper passport. This is already done. If you have the blue passport, the European Union passport, the Australian passport, you could damn near travel anywhere in the world. You got a passport from most nations in Africa, you can damn near go nowhere. You know what I'm saying? Latin America, same thing to a lesser degree. Asia, probably right behind the European Union and the United States. When the war went down between Russia and Ukraine, Russian passports, you're not even allowed no more to travel directly from Russia to the United States. A lot of people don't even know that happened, right? And I know this because I met a girl who is a Russian, and she lived in the U.S. and this is like not too, this is after this went down, but because of the Russia-Ukraine war, she couldn't fly directly to Russia to see her relatives. Now, mind you, she was raised in the United States. Her stepdad is an American. Her mom is Russian. And so she speaks perfect English. She went to school here, but she's a Russian citizen. She's not yet, I believe, an American citizen. And she told me that she has to fly to Turkey to get to Russia. She flies to Turkey, then from Turkey to Russia. Okay. Or the reason why she had to fly to Turkey, because her relatives in Russia, one of the places that they were allowed to go to was to fly to Turkey. They couldn't fly to the US. They couldn't fly to a European Union country. So they were going to meet in Turkey. And then from there, she was also going to go back to Russia, see them, fly back from Russia to Turkey, then from Turkey back to the US. Because she's like, I think, permanent resident or whatever. But there was restrictions in movement. So that can happen to a group of people. This can impact your ability to trade. If you're a man involved in international business, or you have family members in other countries, you might not be able to see them. Okay. Now we see this in certain scales. If you look at like Korea, North and South Korea, people that are relatives related to each other in North Korea cannot leave, have a hard time, of course, the state restricts their movement to where they can't, it's hard for them to leave and escape North Korea to get to South Korea. Okay. But imagine this on a global scale. Okay. So scarcity is sometimes engineered and maintained independence. Now, 8. And the reason why this is such a long lesson, I want to make sure I have some of these points in here so I don't have to discuss them again. So that way brothers and sisters can go back and look at some of these lessons. But the title is very, it's an epic lesson title, and the image is epic. So the lesson is going to be somewhat epic. You dig? Shy. Okay. Because we're seeing in the midnight. We got the light, Akim. We got the light. Okay. So remember, World War III, the end game for all nations. So I'm giving you their motivating factors. I'm giving you what is being created on a smaller scale, but the attempt is to do it globally. Okay. So ideological indoctrination, citizens are conditioned to accept system. Okay. Education systems used for propaganda. That's the reason why they want to feminize the woman. One of the things that Pat Ben David, and from Valuetainment, his show, he has a big show. He's, I believe he's an Assyrian Christian from Iran who left after the Iranian Revolution. So he has the desire for Iran to turn more like America. One of the things that they talk about is when the Shah of Iran was running before the Iranian Revolution, they had like these videos and pictures you can see from back in the 70s prior to 1979. And they'll tell you how the women of Iran, how they were dressed. They were dressed like Western women. They had Daisy Dukes and jeans on, and they had their chest out. And that's the image, that's the desire that they want them to bring. They want to bring in the feminist ideology to these different countries because this weakens the nation. It weakens the men, it weakens the children. It takes man away from his purpose. Okay? This goes back to the garden. This is an ideology that goes back to the serpent in the garden. This is a serpentine satanic doctrine. This is the reason why we know that who Esau is. We know because we know their ways. We know the ways of the children of Edom. Okay? It was prophesied that they would have these powers, that they will be this immoral, wicked people that would turn the world upside down. And that's one of the ways they do it, through their education system. Okay? And their education system is just not school, it's social media, it's media, it's books. Okay, it's radio, television, film. All of these things can be used as tools as propaganda to indoctrinate the masses. Now, if you recall years back, I did a lesson, and this is why I recommend y'all also watch it as well. Let me see if I could find it. And I can show you. Let me see if we can get to, okay, view your channel. Yeah. See what we can get. Okay. I think Bezmenov, I believe was the name. He was a former KGB. Okay. Now, I don't even remember if it was ever removed. Because some of these videos, boy, when I tell you, some of these videos, them peoples don't like them. Boy, I'm telling you, they be getting some of these videos. They be like, hold up, we cannot have this stuff playing on YouTube because this is too. It's gonna wake up the minds of the peoples. And I don't think it's on here. Might have been removed, but I'm trying to check it right now just to see. I do have. It's not here. Oh, hold up. Maybe it is. The brother Uremia knows the video that I'm referring to. Because family. Okay, I kind of have an idea of why it's not coming up. I got so many videos that this might come up now. Okay. So I found the videos. Now watch. Now these are the 3 videos. And I kind of show you examples of some of this stuff. I think it's Yurgey Bezmenov. I believe that's the name of the CIA. Well, not CIA, the KGB guy who predicted the future of the Americans, man, of the West. Okay, he predicted this. Now, this is 1984. Remember, he had this interview in 1984. And the interesting thing about this, I highly recommend this for you brothers that really want to get your good understanding. Okay, this is a lot of this is for y'all brothers, man. These videos, psychological warfare. Okay. Demoralization part 1, a strong delusion. Demoralization Part 2, BLM and Marxism. Okay. I highly recommend you watch these videos back to back to back. Okay. Another one is Psychological Warfare Operation Trust. Okay. Heavy stuff is in here, Akim. Definitely watch this because it goes into some of the stuff that I'm talking about, but we kind of go into examples and some other angles. Now, it's interesting that he had his interview in 1984 because 1984 is also the name of the book written by George Orwell. And George Orwell wrote that book much prior to 1984, okay, about a future dystopian world. Okay, and we show you in these videos how they get to that. Okay. Now look at this, Akim. I put in the quote from Vladimir Lenin. Okay. The best way to control the opposition is to lead it yourself. That's way to control the opposition is to lead it yourself. And that's what they're doing. See, they make the people believe that they are going to get a benefit from the doctrine that's being told to them. That's why they believe it. People are believing in the ideology, believing it's going to lead to a positive outcome, not realizing that they're actually just being controlled by the very elites, that they think that they're outwitting. Oh, if I vote for this, you know, it's like people who was voting for Trump and they were like, Trump is he's against the elites. He's against the system. That's why they don't like him. These people literally believe this, bro. Not knowing that the man is right in the system, buddy. You know what I'm saying? He's part of it. He's masterful at it. One of the best. Trump, one of the best ever when it comes to ruling. All time. He an all-time great. For real. Trump is an all-time great of leaders in the history. In the history of the world. See, people, because they don't understand his end game. They don't understand his purpose. Okay? Trump is one of the greatest leaders of all time. Not because he's doing something good for the masses, but because of the way he's been able to confuse the people and control the narrative and to still get his agenda across. Now, are there some flubs that happen amongst the elite in their calculation? Yes, that's the reason why the war is going to happen. However, his ability to control the mind, his ability to not care about what his former MAGA members think about him and still continue his objective, not many people can do that. Okay? He has intentions of doing the objectives laid out. Okay? Now, what do they do? Also, rituals, slogans, make America great again. Okay, what's another slogan? America first. Remember to lock her up. He said he's going, when he gets into power, he's going to lock up Hillary Clinton. You know, loyalty pledges. You know, people wearing hats and stuff, make America great again hats. It's part of the indoctrination, fam. All part of the indoctrination. Rewriting moral values to align with the regime. They do that in a lot of places, man. That's like, and remind you, these things are not just modern concepts, Akim. This is stuff that was done prior. There was just not maybe an organized set of words or lingo for it. Okay. Like we have now, you know, now we organize these things into thoughts, but these are things that regimes like this do as ways of maintaining power. They say we got to make them think differently against us because, you know, they think this way. So in order for us, we got to control them. Let's do this. Let's do that. A lot of times they'll use things to satisfy the, you know, there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If they'll sometimes fulfill the basic needs of the people, their eating, okay, and their shelter, provide a way to just provide basic necessities, and the people knowing it comes through them, and then therefore makes it easier because you're feeding them. You also psychologically control them, so they know these things back in time past. All elite people, political power groups, royal families, okay, elite classes, they all know these things and they use these things to their advantage. Okay. 9, perpetual state of crisis. The regime maintains control by keeping society in constant emergency. There's always something going on. What is it? Endless wars or eternal internal enemies. Manufactured threats, justification for extraordinary powers. This is where you start getting into presidential or executive powers. That's what they call it in the US. Executive powers. Remember that they had the no more kings. Remember that there's certain factions within the Trump cabinet that actually wants Trump to be a permanent ruler or to be able to rule in a third term. Okay. This is what they plan on doing. This is one of the things, or one of the rumors that we'll say of what they're planning on doing. Justification for extraordinary powers to supersede the Constitution of now, under the state of an emergency, if you can create a crisis or emergency strong enough, you can what? Suspend elections. Hakim, you can suspend elections. Because we can't do it. It's the social unrest, the economy, the threats that we have. It's just we're not able to do it. You're not able to vote. We're gonna have to suspend the elections. We're gonna, I don't know. We're gonna have to suspend it indefinitely. Endless wars of internal enemies. Well, how's that going on in the U.S.? What are the endless wars? The endless wars is all the wars you've seen throughout the Western world. The Western world has done a lot of invasions of lands and territories, okay? Overthrew whole regimes, proxy wars, engagement. All these things are part of it. You're in a perpetual state of crisis and war. We got these big enemies. They don't like us. It's like they told the people, the Russians don't like us. After the Cold War was over, they said Russians, they don't like us. And people still believe that. Russians want to be like Americans. They want peace. They want to have fun. They want to be able to enjoy their movies. They want to drive their blacked out, black on black vehicles. If you know about Russians, they like they blacked out cars. They're, heavily tinted. You feel me? So they want to just live their life. They want to have fun. But if on the other side of the world and in Europe, people are being told, hey, these are your enemies, then you'll naturally create them as enemies. Now, internal enemies, an example of internal enemies could be a particular oppressed racial group, racial/ethnic group can be viewed as an internal enemy of the state. Migrants, okay? This is also part of what they're doing in Europe is they're bringing in all the people from these other countries to purposely create an internal enemy. So that way the masses will turn to nationalists, fascists. Okay, that is part of the point, is to drive up the nationalism/fascist people that will be controlled opposition. Okay, create a crisis that can create civil unrest, quote unquote, civil wars. Okay, to bring in an outcome in the end, or to keep the people distracted from what they're doing overseas. You dig? What are among the things that they also do, these internal enemies? If you know the history of the Israeli state and the Hamas situation, Hamas has actually been funded, okay, large part by the Israeli government, Akim. Okay, this is well documented. It doesn't mean those that are in Hamas are not truly fighting against the Israeli state. However, they are in some ways and others being funded by them. Okay, even the whole situation with October 7th, that operation was funded and oversaw by Mossad. Getting deep here. Okay. Manufactured threats. Okay, these are false flags. You know, remember when they would pull up them videos of Osama bin Laden making threats? You know, I forgot the name. They said the dude that was, they said it was an actor. I forgot his name, but there was like a rumor that it was this particular actor, agent of the U.S., and he was doing these videos. It was very funny. Justification for extraordinary powers, of course, we already discussed that. All right, so if people feel unsafe, they're more likely to accept authoritarian control. Yeah, we're not safe. We were attacked, you know, the Twin Towers. We're not safe. That's why when you go to the airport, you know, you got to remove your shoes. People don't remember. A lot of y'all that are younger, y'all don't remember the time when you could walk through the security terminal. You didn't have to take your shoes and belt off. You just walk through that joker. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have like a single check where you had to put your hands out and they had to, you know, use a little metal wand to see if you had anything on you. Yeah. They started imposing these different restrictions. Okay, that's why they later on came up with things like PSA pre-check. So all these things are things that they'll do. You'll start to allow yourself to be, you know, searched because it's for the safety of all of us. Okay, another way to slowly infringe upon your quote unquote rights. Okay. So again, the restrictions is freedom of movement and life choices. Basic freedoms are tightly controlled, limited on travel, residence, and occupation. Remember, this is one of the reasons why they have these electric cars, because electric cars are basically, you know, on a digital grid and can be controlled. You can be limited. They could tell you can only, you know, carbon tax, you can only drive this amount of miles. You know, we're going to probably monitor, okay, you've driven too much, you're causing too much pollution, you have to limit. They might even have a warning signal like, warning, you only have 10 miles left to drive for the rest of the week. Sunday at midnight, we'll allocate you another 100 miles. But until then, you only have 10 miles that you can use. That's the kind of stuff that they want to do. Or if you go charge your vehicle, they'll be like, oh, we can't charge you past this point because you've charged too much for the week. Must wait until midnight Sunday. These are the things. These are some of the things that, listen, some of the stuff I'm bringing up is one of the reasons why men will volunteer to fight, to stop this from happening or to overthrow the systems that would allow for this to happen. Limits on travel, residence, occupation. Think West Bank, Gaza, Akiam. You don't think they might not bring it to other places on the planet? Control over family life, reproduction, and relationships. It's happened during slavery, all this stuff. This is apartheid regime. Okay, it's basically apartheid. If you know anything about the apartheid, when they created the different Bantu stands where the quote unquote black South Africans live, the whites, the Asians / coloreds, they had different categories of coloreds. When they came to decide who was going to live where, they would literally separate families. Your sister or your sibling could be classified as colored and you're classified as black. And now y'all are living in different parts of Pretoria or Johannesburg. Okay. Or Cape Town. Akium, a lot of this stuff has already been practiced on smaller scales. They refine these things and they want to bring it out to the rest of the world. Okay. Reproduction. How many of our people were sterilized? When them, you know, you had sterilization programs that occurred, I believe, out in North Carolina with so-called black women back in the day. Think about Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger. Okay. All these things are real. They happen to also, I believe, the Puerto Ricans. The Puerto Rican women, I believe, were also faced sterilization heavily. Okay. So controlling your reproduction. Sometimes they even take your kids away from you. Okay. Or relationships. Oh, you're so-called this ethnic group / race. You can't or shouldn't marry this other group / race as well. Okay. Oh, age. Oh, you can only marry, you can't marry no lower than this age or older than this age. Those are all restrictions. Okay. Past systems or internal checkpoints. Okay. So past systems means you have to go through a particular area. If you go there to the West Bank, you go there to Gaza, if you want to leave, you have to go through these past systems, checkpoints. Okay. Sometimes they'll set up a checkpoints every so amount of miles or kilometers. Okay. You'll get checked by security operatives. Okay. You're good to go. Oh, you're not good to go. Okay. Remember, let's get this. Get some precepts here. And you can see some of this stuff in the Bible, Akim. You can see some of the stuff in the Bible. Some of the stuff I'm talking about, dystopianism, is all in the Bible. You know, you can read about Nebuchadnezzar and his idol of gold and telling the people to worship. That's making you bow down to an ideology. Okay. Okay. Let's see if we could find it. And Akim, don't feel discouraged. Okay. We're to be encouraged by this. We're not to be discouraged. We're not in a situation where there's no way out. Okay. We got a way out through Yahushua HaMashiach. Okay. But we have to keep it all the way real deal Holyfield. Got to keep it 100. Okay. Because if we don't, then when this stuff happens, you'll be even more shocked and you'll be like, oh, I didn't know that this is going to happen. Because you got people out there, they believing that the way it's going to end, especially these Christians and some of these Israelites, they think that when the time comes that they're going to be caught up in the sky and they're not going to have to face any trials, any great tribulation. Okay. But we know that it was said that through much tribulation shall we enter into the kingdom. Okay. So we have to understand that. Okay, so let's get it real quick. So restrictions of movement, right? When we go to Second Ezra in the book of the Apocrypha, 1611 King James, Akim. Okay, so if you just have a regular King James, but you do not have the Apocrypha, this is how you would need to go. Okay, remember, these people they're fighting an existential crisis. So this is Second Ezra chapter 15. We'll start at verse 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein. So the whole world, not just one area, the whole world, Akim. For the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. Remember we talked about in the book of Joel. Okay, let them, their swords, okay, their weaponry. Let the weak say that I'm strong. Let them arm up, the mighty men of war, the people, the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall rise up and fight against another, and swords in their hand, weapons of war. Okay, for there shall be sedition among men, okay, which is revolt against the government, because remember that people are going to not want to be part of their rights being taken away or being forced to believe things they don't want to believe, or have their families taken away from them, or their freedom is taken away from them, their freedom of move, all these things, whatever falls into that individual, that'll be their motivation. Okay, and invading one another, they shall not regard their kings nor princes. So whoever their rulers or leaders are, they're not going to regard them. They're going to revolt against them. A revolution, okay, or a revolt against their leaders. And the course of their action shall stand in their power. Okay, the power is going to be to the people. It's going to lead to the people kind of gaining a little bit of upper hand. This is one of the reasons why, Akim, the elites have bunkers, deep underground military bases. Okay, that's among the reasons why they're going to have bunkers, Akim. Okay. Let me see. Kind of want to get another preset prepared. And yeah, real heavy. Okay, so the course of their action center their power, and this is the one I wanted to bring here. Verse 17. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. Okay? And the restrictions can happen by the government. Okay, meaning the government can restrict it, or the masses. Okay, people forming factions, alliances, militia groups, okay, opposition groups, political parties, whatever it is you want to call it, they can restrict it. Okay, especially when the leadership doesn't have control, or the leadership could be controlling that through proxies. Okay. Going back to the last part of this. Okay, the regime shapes not just public life, but private existence. Okay, the metaverse, my guy. They're controlling that. So, and look at the regimes that's on Nazi Germany, Stalinist USSR, North Korea. Okay, the ones that I mentioned prior. They just want to do this on a bigger scale. Okay, under what's called the New World Order. New World Order. New World Order. Yeah, that's what they want to do it under. All right. Now, wanted to do this as well. I'm going to start up and I'm going to kind of skip down. This is Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 4. Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home. Okay, he's a fugitive. Think Abel, think Esau, Edom, who enlarges his desire as hell and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people. Okay, so all the nations he invaded, he took, he wasn't satisfied, he gathered the nations and heapeth him all the people. And when all these people, when he got near to these people, what did he do? He put the sword to them, massacred some of them. You know, you can look around, I mean, go through, you can see different things from the Japanese and the so-called Last Samurai. I think William Perry is his name. Going in and messing with them and telling them, hey, open up. And they opened up and they became industrialized and enlightened to the rest of the world and their ways. And they ended up, you know, being in league with some of the Europeans, you know, and World War II happened and they had a war. And what happened to them ultimately? in the form of Fat Man and Little Boy, they dropped them things on them. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What's another example? Britain had induced a famine that killed, I think, like, something like 50 million people in India, in their former British colony. Okay. The partition of India was actually controlled by the British. The British actually drew those lines during that partition on a map that led to the slaughter of millions when that partition came about. Very bad. The partition of India, which, it's interesting because they kind of happened around the same time as the partition of the Holy Land. Okay. Read about that in the history. They also went to China, had the Opium Wars, created Macau as a Portuguese colony, Hong Kong as a British colony. The Opium Wars, they brought opium to destabilize China. That's why a lot of these Asian countries to this day have death penalties against drug dealers, to this day, because of that history of the Opium Wars. A lot of you don't know that. The century of humiliation, 100 years of humiliation that China faced. That's what they call it. They're still wanting to get their get back over that. That is among the motivations of Moab. It's one of the motivations of, these different countries, of what was done unto them when Esau heaped to them, right? Let's go down to that, because this is talking about Esau, okay? When you go down to verse 17, watch this, Akim. For the violence of Lebanon shall cover thee, and the spoil of beasts, which made them afraid, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land of the city and all that dwelt therein. Come on, man. Akim, that's among the motivations. That's among the motivations that these other nations have. Definitely the violence of Lebanon, Hezbollah. Hey, they bombing South Lebanon right now, carpet bombing them. They want to get to the Latan River. They want to make that the new border point barrier as they continue to expand, okay, for their Greater Israel project, Akim. This is all tied together. This is all tied together. All these nations have different interests that are similar in overlap and that are in opposition to one another. This is the reason why they're going to come together to decide, let's duke it out for all these things that we talked about before. But among those things, because of men's blood, what did I mean by that? They're looking for their payback, the big payback. The nations will be looking to settle scores. They want to revenge those of their own people that were lost. Remember what happened February 28th, the decapitation strike in Iran, okay, that took out the Ayatollah Khamenei, the wife of the son who's the current Ayatollah, and his daughter. Many of the leadership, 50 plus of the leadership, was taken out in those strikes. Okay, the girls' school that was also hit, took out 150 plus girls and the principal and teachers. Okay, many of those children were the children of the military, the IRGC, the Israeli Revolutionary Guard. There was their children. Do you think that those men don't want vengeance? So not only is an existential threat one of the motivations, okay, for the war, but the reason outside of the existential crisis is a get back. They're tired of being victims of these Edomites. They're tired of being victims of the proxies of Edom. Okay, because Edom has proxies that have waged war against other nations and waged decimation for the sake of controlling of resources, right? Such as the energy resources. Okay, the alliance between the United States and the different Arab states. Okay, what they know as the GCC. Okay, these are all things that are part of the problems, A lot of blood was spilled with these factions and alliances, and scores need to be settled. Vengeance is on the mind of many of these different nations that will be fighting, okay, along with the existential threat, okay, which provides an extra means of motivation, okay. So we gotta definitely think about that. Now, I don't want to get into a deeper prophecy, but I'm gonna just keep that for the Akim as well. But another thing that is motivation as far as the end game for all nations is their eschatology of their various belief systems. Not going to go into that right now, maybe another time, but I've talked about it, briefly in time past. You have the Islamic version, both the Sunni and the Shiite. You have the Hindu version to a lesser degree of their view of the end times. You, of course, have your so-called Judeo-Christian. We call them the John Hagee Christians, okay? Or the Schofield Christians. The Schofield Bible heavily influencing the end game. And if you want to have an example of that, you have Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary of War. Okay. Pete Hegseth has pushed different ideologies, end time ideologies. Okay, when it comes to the end times. Okay, and that's part of the ideology to motivate, okay, the people. Let me see if we could might be able to close it off with some of this. Give me a moment. I think I liked the video. There was actually something that I actually liked that was concerning this subject. So maybe I'll see if I can add it in here. Oddly enough, I actually did not even hold on. Let me see. This is funny because this is actually a fake scripture, by the way. And I actually didn't watch it. So we're watching. You're going to get my live reaction to this. So bear with me. Trying to get this open and going. And then let's see if we can make this bigger. Oh, dang, I did it wrong. Got to go into theater mode. I don't know why it's not doing it. Okay, it worked. I don't know why it was tripping. Very weird. Let me close this tab and then we'll get this going. Get this going. Okay. So the religious angle. The religious angle is a very important angle. Okay. It's one of the motivations behind some of this, which is like the third one. So remember, first one was existential threat, or facing existential threat of your people being annihilated or being perpetually enslaved is going to make you want to fight as a people. That's going to draw in the nations. 2 is vengeance. Okay. The blood spilled, settling scores, major motivation behind why the nations will be driven into war. And 3, belief that your nation or your people is fulfilling an end of the world objective. And if you recall, I did a lesson of the pamphlet that was sent out by Russia to their troops of why they're fighting Ukraine. And they were told they were fighting against basically satanic forces, the New World Order hegemony. So basically saying that you're on the right side of history. This is based off of their belief of what is known as Eastern Orthodox. Okay, and the belief that Russia plays an important part in maintaining Christianity through the Orthodox view. But they also have the motivation of maintaining what's known as Mother Russia as well. Okay, so there's various motivations within these sectors. Okay, but they're all kind of together because all of these do have to play a role. You do need the philosophical or the religious basis behind your motivations. Boy, there's a lot of ambulances today for some reason. So let me go ahead and get this tab going, and we're going to play this. I don't even know if I even have it. Did I have a fair use? I could have sworn I had fair use in here, like a fair use. I don't know why I haven't added the fair use trailer, but now it's going to make me. It's going to make me want to add the fair use trailer. Might be on my desktop. Hold up, Akim. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I didn't add it. Okay. But this is the type of stuff I have to do just to make sure this stuff stays, you know, strike free, no issues. So let's go ahead and do this first before we play the trailer. All right. So as you see here from YouTube, Pete Hezek reads a prayer adapted from the movie Pulp Fiction. Okay. And these people are living in a fictional, you know, they're living in a fantasy world. But remember, perception versus reality, Akim. Let's go ahead and listen to what he has to say.
By Sandy 1, which is one of the Sandys, to all Sandys, all those A-10 crews, prior to all CSAR missions, but especially this CSAR mission that happened in real time. They call it CSAR 2517, which I think is meant to reflect Ezekiel 25:17.
So they're using a fake scripture that's used to reflect Ezekiel chapter 25, verse 17, which is very interesting. Okay. So we'll listen to the we'll listen to what he has to say, and I'll bring out that precept. Okay.
So the prayer is CSAR 25:17, and it reads, and pray with me, please. The path of the downed aviator is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of camaraderie and duty, shepherd the lost through the valley of darkness. For he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to capture and destroy my brother. And you will know my call sign is Sandy 1 when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Now, you know what's very interesting, Akim? The chapter, the verse he's referring to, Ezekiel 25 and 17, right? Goes exactly into what we've been talking about. The judgment on the Gentile nations. Now, that's a fictional precept from the movie Pulp Fiction, but this actually aligns with what we've been talking about in the ultimate endgame. Now, as you see here, I'm not going to read the whole thing. You see Ammon's being judged, Moab's judgment, and Edom's judgment. Okay, and the Philistines' judgment as well. Now, we're going to go ahead and get, I'm going to read this first. We'll read the Ezekiel 25 and 17. I will execute great vengeance upon them with furious rebukes, and they shall know that I am Yahweh, when I shall lay my vengeance upon them. Now, we'll go ahead and rebuke what was spoken by, Mr. Hegzik, and we'll just deal with this and close it out. Because this is what's going to happen when the war of Armageddon, the war to end all wars, the greatest war in the history of mankind, comes to an end. Starting Ezekiel chapter 25 and verse 12. Thus saith the Lord God, because that Edom had dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance, and hath greatly offended and revenged himself upon them. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. And I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel, and they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord God. And with that, I want to give all glory and praises to our Heavenly Father Yahweh, and we do so in the name of our Lord and Savior Yahweh Shai. Grace and mercy be abound to the hopeful elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Shalom.